I just wanted to introduce Mari Lopez as our trauma-informed guest lecturer this month. Mari and I worked together for many years in West Contra Costa School District in California as school psychologists and also as wraparound facilitators for families. So we're really excited to have her come back. She is a bilingual school psych and an incredible wrap facilitator, really transforming families' lives and helping in so many ways. So we're excited to have you here to share the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Emily. It's nice to be back.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have till about 11.
Mm-hmm.
So I will, go through my presentation, and if there's any questions at the end, then we can definitely address those, and then I'll end at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have the co-host features?
Yeah, you should. I can give you features for make you a co-host as well. So there you go. You should be able to share.
Okay. Are you able to see that? The PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I work as a wraparound facilitator. I have a dual role in our school district as a trained school psychologist, and over the years of doing that work and recognizing the importance of mental health, our district created a school-based clinic. So here in California, we have a lot of our children may be eligible for Medi-Cal or some sort of state-funded medical services. There's a lot of different types of Medi-Cal for our children who have what we call full scope. That means that they are also able to and funded to receive mental health services. And then this is sort of the population that we serve. So in our school district, I think we're at like year 6 or 7. The school-based clinic was created. Back then, Emily and I were working as wrap facilitators. And then in our collective group of school psychologists, we also have 4 therapists who provide therapy services at 4 of our different schools, 4 or 5 different schools. So they're site-based, however, I am not. I am able to serve any family in our area that has full scope Medi-Cal, so long as they live within the bounds of our school district and are basically within the ages of 5 to 18. So if they're a student in our district, then I can work with them. So what is Wraparound? It actually is a nationwide service. Different states have probably their own version. They may call it Wraparound, they may not, but it is a nationwide sort of initiative, and different states are at different phases of adopting it. So Wraparound is meant to be it's what we call a higher end service. So our children who have mental health needs and are experiencing like the distress of their family unit also needing additional like stabilizing supports. This is where Wraparound may be needed at that point. It is family driven. It is meant to be strength based for our families. Our families are coming in needing a lot of support in navigating systems. Medi-Cal is a very complex system, and in order to access services, there can be a lot of barriers for our families to know how to navigate those systems. At times, we are needing, medical support. They're needing to deal with court systems. They're needing to deal with child and family services. And so oftentimes the overlay of the complexities of each system makes it very hard for them to be able to really understand what it is that they need. So Wraparound really becomes very useful at that point. I have found that even though I may not always know how to function in a particular system, the fact that each of us have learned how to deal in at least one, then it gives us really an edge, even with our families who are just not even knowing how to get somebody to call them back. For those of us that, just that kind of persistence, we know that, can really work to the advantage of our family. So I've had to learn a lot. I've dealt with the courts and guardianships and traffic court for youth who need to do community service hours. There's a certain part of it that I really enjoy, which is very flexible. It also leads me to sort of find ways of making new relationships across different sort of systems. So either way, I say that just to focus on the fact that it can be very difficult for families to navigate a lot of different systems. So wraparound really does come in to sort of case manage and support families sort of hold all of these moving parts. And then it's always for the benefit of stabilizing the child's mental health needs. So the client is the child. And so then from there, we support the family in order to hold as much as possible so that the child will hopefully experience a reduction in symptoms. So it's family driven. It's a process. So sometimes I often find there's a lot of misunderstanding also, even with folks that come asking for wraparound. I'm it. I don't have a team. There isn't I don't come with anything in particular. I offer the space for a team to build. I offer the space for people to come together to collaborate with one another. And so that's why we call it a team-based process rather than a service per se, because it really is just for planning, and I do a lot of check-ins. So I'm really just holding as much as possible all of the folks involved in the life of the child and the family. The other aspect of it, so the difference between like a wraparound facilitator and a social worker, oftentimes a social worker comes in for a brief period of time and may come in to make some suggestions about a service, may come in and guide a family in a certain direction. And it's been my experience in those cases, there's just a very brief period of time that they're in and then they're out. As a wraparound facilitator, I don't go anywhere. So it's like I'm a social worker, I'm the case manager, I hold the family. It is meant to be a service that can be around for a year to a year and a half. However, there are cases where I have been involved for many years. So it really is a process where we can be there for a while, and it's helping family build skills. So what comes with that is we have regular meetings. At times, depending on the needs of the family, we may meet every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, once a month. And it's meant to bring together as many of those key players in order to just continue to coordinate services. With that also, I have to generate some sort of like data tracking way of taking notes, keeping track of the information we talk about. The highlight always is to really start talking about the things that are going well, the things that have been helpful, have improved. And so I'll share a little bit of what it looks like. There's an agenda we generally provide. There's a structure we follow. So there's the requirement also where we do have to come together on a regular basis with whoever is providing services as a professional, and then linking up and bringing the families in to be a part of the process. So it's the family really, we are building a partnership with the family that they are able to have like consistent, regular contact with the people who are working with them. So one of the things that we notice is once we start bringing a lot of professionals in, I mean, for example, I can have a family where we can have 3 children in the family and each child may have their own therapist. They may be from the same agency, they may not be from the same agency. And so if you think about just that, this parent is working with 3 different therapists that may be working on similar goals, but may not necessarily communicate with one another because they're helping maybe one child. And so then it can become pretty cumbersome for the family to sort of keep track of the different professionals. Then it also provides a way for the professionals to come together in a cohesive way to understand like the global needs of the family and then how their particular client fits into the family dynamics. And so so you know that's the whole point. Then from there, there just may be family members who want to be a part of the group that is what we call like a natural support for the parents. And at times we may have maybe parents that are separated and we're trying to find a way of bringing them together to sort of also work with one another. So there can be a lot of moving parts and each team is individual. Who is part of the child's life really depends on who becomes part of this WRAP team. I think the added benefit of being embedded within the school system is that we also have just the immediate access to the school aspect of the child's life. So it is much easier for me to link up with a teacher or a school. As I'm holding all of these mental health professionals, I also have this ability to come in and literally just sort of connect very quickly with the school system and then just sort of find a way of bridging those together. It can be a little bit difficult. Wraparound is a service that can be provided by many different agencies as well. And so if we, in my particular case, the fact that I'm embedded within the school system makes it easier to navigate that world and support the families a lot faster as well. So it just makes it a lot easier, especially in the world of special education. Having those existing relationships, I can get things done a lot faster just because of those relationships that I've built. So that oftentimes can become a little bit harder for one of our other agencies to then also try to sort of figure out they have to figure out the educational world, whereas I already know how to navigate that. They have other edges in other ways that they can move in much swifter, but in this particular case, a lot of my clients also have special education services, so it just makes it a lot easier for me to connect and sort of move that along if it's needed. So so again, wraparound services are formed around the needs of the child. Oftentimes I will get a lot of referrals where there's a lot of talk around the parent needs this, the parent needs this, the parent needs this. And so I have to always go back to, and how is this impacting the child? Is the child demonstrating some sort of mental health need, things like depressive sort of symptoms, anxiety, ADHD, those are probably the PTSD, the most common diagnoses for our children. But that has to be there in order to support the parent. And oftentimes I will hear, oh, no, the child is fine. It's the parent that needs the help. And that's not child wrap. I will have to sort of find creative ways of maybe recommending other adult services. But again, it really is focused. This is child wraparound. I've heard there is adult wraparound. I don't have a lot of experience with that. So again, in our particular world, the child is the client. So like I said, with our particular wraparound, referrals can come from anywhere in our district, so long as the child is 5 years old and in kindergarten, and then even up to 12th grade. I can have a client that is 18 and maybe even 19, so long as they are still enrolled in attending school. Once they are no longer attending our schools, then I have to refer them on to one of our other agencies. Again, they have to have a suspected DSM diagnosis. Like I said, the more common ones are post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, ADHD for sure. The other piece, again, that is very important with wraparound is having an involved caregiver. Wraparound is not something that we do to anyone. Wraparound or any other service is not something that we impose on anyone. It is a partnership. So an involved caregiver is very important. Because the majority of my contact is really with the adults in the child's life. I do need to have an involved caregiver, excuse me, that will be part of these wrap meetings. If we don't have a caregiver, we cannot have wrap meetings. Those are probably what we would call provider meetings or provider check-ins. And we don't want to have too many of those, because we really want to work with the family, alongside the family, in partnership with. And so if we have, oftentimes I'll have parents or staff that really feel like wraparound will be beneficial for the entire family unit. But if the caregivers work a lot because they're needing to provide for their families, or they're already pretty stressed, having someone like me may not feel like very helpful at that moment in time. So I am always asking and looking for how receptive is the caregiver. Are they in a place where it feels even emotionally helpful for them to have one more person come into their world? Because they'll probably have to do more versus less. So again, this is where I talk about children. Different children in the family can have different mental health providers, and what we have found, if there isn't a way of bringing everyone together, then every provider may be working in what we call a silo. There's no consistent communication. You're able to do that as a provider, check in with others in order to support the family, but there isn't really a system of doing that. And the wraparound process does allow for that and requires it.
Mari,
Yes.
Do you find sometimes that parents have a hard time connecting with the school, but they're able to connect with you, and you can kind of heal that relationship sometimes?
Yes. So and it can be around any system. Parents have had a lot of maybe not very positive experiences. The school, obviously, a school district is probably the one where they may have the most challenges, just because that's where their children go on a daily basis. So I find that because I may have existing relationship with the school or with some professional at the school, now the family is my wrap client. It's just easier to sort of start bridging that relationship, creating a consistent way of communicating, maybe at times working with the school staff to understand the mental health needs of the child, some of the challenges that the family faces from a more therapeutic and trauma-informed lens, rather than from punitive, like they're not doing this, they're not doing that. So I find that that there is a way in which someone like me can really expand upon people's understanding of each other. Sometimes their families have had a lot of hurt with schools, and so then we just try to find a way of reconnecting, rebuilding those relationships in a way that again will benefit the child. And then in my particular world, my clients can be general education students or special education students. Again, because I'm not being funded through federal monies that's related to special education, then that's not a limiting factor. All right. So again, what do? I case manage, I keep track of who becomes part of the child and the family's world. For example, this past Monday, so I have a client, I have a father that's raising his 2 children on his own, and have a pretty good relationship with the school psychologist at the school, have a pretty good relationship with the teacher, who, by the way, is very trauma informed. She's fabulous. And then now the link through an outside agency. And it was actually pretty beautiful. The therapist had a interaction on the day of her, of the visit with, the session with the 2 children. In this particular case, one therapist works with both children. And she really wanted to talk to the team about, as providers, what she observed that day. So she sent out an email to the 3 of us and said, I would like to meet with everyone on Monday at 8 a.m. And there we all were. So we had created enough of a rapport amongst ourselves as providers that she definitely felt comfortable reaching out. And again, in this particular case, in order to share a little bit of what she observed. And then again, it gave us the opportunity to now all of us talk about how we want to support the skills that she is working on with her child, things like mindfulness, helping him calm down from his fight response, helping him resolve some of the emotional feelings that underlie the interactions. He can become very dysregulated, which is, very disruptive in schools. And we talked about how we want to bring in what she's doing into the classroom, how we all want to talk about mentioning her name as the person who we are all working with, because he has a very beautiful bond with her. So, that's just a perfect example around how once there is team trust, which it does take some time to build that, we can all connect very quickly, and again, for the benefit of the child and supporting the family. As a facilitator, I lead what are called these wraparound meetings, and then I generate a plan in a way to where we get a sense of the information that was shared. So strengths, sharing information about what has been working, what has been going well. And then when I show you that in a little bit, there's also the action steps. So we talk about strengths, we discuss needs, and then the needs immediately yield with, okay, so how can we support? What would be helpful for the family? The family gets to be there and talks about what would be helpful for them as well. As a facilitator, again, I have regular communication with families and with the team members as well. So one of the things that I love about my job as a facilitator is I get to walk into people's homes and be a part of the world that they're living in. Even in COVID, I do home visits. It was very difficult that first shutdown year because I had to be at home, finding a way of supporting families just like this, on the phone, through some sort of Zoom format. And it was extremely frustrating, even for me, because what I find is what families need is the support to help them figure things out alongside of them. Zoom and phone are not the most beneficial, or obviously the ideal format but we had to make it work as best as we could. We were holding wrap meetings on Zoom. And in some ways, we're keeping some of those features, which I can talk a little bit about in a minute too. And then anytime any additional service is needed, then I tend to be the point person that will follow through on that as well. So a little bit on wrap meetings and Zoom and how that's working now. I have to say that there is a kind of a flexible way in which Zoom has become part of our worlds. At most of the time, I will be present in the family's home for a wrap meeting. But I may have professionals that for some given reason were not able to attend in person. And so I'll be there, whoever can make it in person, and then we'll open up a Zoom room and we may have other folks that can join in via Zoom. So that's kind of become a nice kind of a hybrid model. And so we've kept some of those features because it makes it quite convenient. Oftentimes we can have school meetings with parents. I may be in person with them, helping them maybe navigate the technology so that we can have this meeting with the school, but then the school meeting may be on Zoom. So we've like I said, we've still had to sort of be careful with COVID precautions, and a lot of schools are not having a lot of in-person meetings. So, but I can be there in person. The parent still feels accompanied, and that still is something that works really well. So one of the other things that I find I have to address when I get a referral is whether it's an appropriate referral for wrap. Oftentimes we think, of course, all families would benefit from, I've had people say to me, well, everyone's going to benefit from having a Mari. And I will say, no, yeah, well, but not every family is a good candidate. I am bilingual Spanish speaking, so a lot of my clients are Spanish speaking. I find that I prefer that. There's a lot of wrap facilitators and a lot of agencies where English can be offered and is available to them, but Spanish is not quite as available. And so I tend to prefer those over our English speaking. But of course, if that's the referral that comes my way, then I will take on the family. So again, a family that maybe just has needs in one particular area or even two may not necessarily be a candidate for wraparound. Because we are functioning in the world of Medi-Cal, there is something that is called, like, it has to meet a threshold of need. And so again, all of our families would benefit from having someone helping them navigate systems, but they have to meet what we call medical necessity in the world of Medi-Cal. Again, if we have families that are already heavily impacted by having a lot of professionals in their world, they're managing, two jobs, which a lot of our families are. If they're not available during kind of that window of time during work hours that I work, it's probably not going to be a good fit at that moment. I don't work weekends. I follow the same sort of, and I don't think any wrap agency in our area works weekends either. So it really is kind of a Monday through Friday, kind of an 8 to 4, 5 kind of a schedule. And then obviously our families have had a lot of, there's a lot of barriers and have had maybe a lot of negative experiences. And so if they're very distrustful of systems in general, it may not be the best time. There has to be an opening for the family to want to rebuild some trust, to want to create a different experience for themselves. And each family has their own experience with that. And so I have found that referrals that come to me from caring professionals at school that will say, well, I don't know this family. I've had a hard time connecting with this family. They don't trust anyone. That will generally also transfer over to me. However, kind of like what Emily mentioned, because I am one step removed from the school district, for example, and if they've had a lot of negative experiences with misbehavior, excessive suspensions, things that we likely see as punitive measures for a lot of our trauma children, then there's already that relationship that gets that is fractured a little bit. So sometimes the fact that I don't work at the school and that I'm not necessarily a educator, then oftentimes I can come in as someone that families may accept and trust in order to help them repair those relationships with, particularly with schools. But if it is a blanket distrust, it may not work at that moment. So any questions at this point? I can show a little bit of kind of the documents that come along with. So the pandemic has made it very difficult in the way that we meet, in the way that we kind of organize our meetings. When I was in person, one of the things that over time, you start figuring out how it works and how what works for every family and what feels comfortable. So oftentimes when we had a meeting in person, there was a way where I was taking notes on those large Post-it sheets because it was important to really emphasize that even though there's a lot of problems and there's a lot of needs, there may be these ways in that we're overlooking some things that are working and some things that are beneficial. And I have to say that just the mindset of the group, the energy that comes into the room when we focus on strengths is really transformative, really transformative. Oftentimes families have only been called, say from a school or they've really just gotten calls reporting problems. And so it makes it very difficult to think we're going to start a meeting and we're just going to focus on problems. And the answer is no, we're not. And we found very creative ways. I had a family that I worked with for years. And every time we had a meeting, or oftentimes that we had a meeting, it was, there was always something new that had happened. And the parent wanted to just start talking about anything that went wrong. And because I often go into the homes and build a little bit of a relationship with the families, they share things with me. So this particular parent had received one of those personalized blankets. And this blanket had all these pictures of family memories that was just beautiful. She loved this blanket. And so one day I told her, I said, I think we're going to start our meeting by always having that blanket available. And and oftentimes I'd show up and, all this happened. I'm like, where is that blanket? Let's go get the blanket. And it was actually pretty symbolic because when she was really struggling to focus on something positive, I'd grab the blanket and I'd wrap it around her. I mean, it was that large. And it was really this beautiful way of like symbolically being embraced by those beautiful memories. And on the day those pictures were taken with her family, that was a beautiful moment that we really did need to sort of find a way to connect to. So that was a very creative way of really being like, okay, take a breath. Let's see if there's something that has been going well since the last time we met. And there usually always is. And so again, it's a strength-based process for that reason. If we get stuck on our problems, we're not able to see, if we are in our own fight-flight response, then we really are not engaging our frontal lobe and we don't see options. We don't see the things that are going well. And so we have to find a way of also helping our caregivers calm down enough that those things can come into the room as well.
Thank you, Mari. Before you share the agenda and the example, I think Jenny had a question about, I know you mentioned like getting funded by Medi-Cal, but just how do you get that job? What credentials do you need? And how does the school district fund it?
Not too well versed on the funding. So basically at this point, our school-based clinic is a contracted agency that is being reimbursed by Medi-Cal, by the individual Medi-Cal of the client. So this is, there's billing that is associated with the service. Every time I have a contact with a family member, there is a billing note that accompanies the time that I spent with them. So the district is reimbursed for my salary in order to do this work. As far as I know, some of it is probably federal money, some of it is probably California state funds. So it is however Medi-Cal is funded that we are reimbursed for the time spent with each individual client. So again, the client has to have full scope medic. I cannot open a case if that mental health portion of Medi-Cal will not pay for this service. So I don't know if that answers the question, but there's monies that for which Medi-Cal is supported, and that is how we are paid for our time.
And you have to have you opened your aMFT, right?
So as a wraparound facilitator, you don't need a license.
Oh.
You don't need a license. A lot of the wraparound facilitators across the different agencies are not licensed. Most of us find it passionate and therefore want to continue getting the clinical experience. And I have found that a lot of my colleagues in the different contracting agencies may also have a dual role in their agency where they're providing therapy and they're WRAP facilitators. So if they're providing direct therapy, then they have to have a license.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as a WRAP facilitator, you do not have to have a clinical license at all.
Okay.
So you work for an outside agency, not a school district, is that correct?
So the part that's confusing is I am an employee of the school district, where our school district created a school-based clinic that is reimbursed by Medi-Cal for the services that I provide.
Yeah.
Kind of county mental health meets school district, but you still get to stay as a school district employee.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the beautiful things that has come out of doing this work for a few years is that our local county clinic that provides also wraparound services has adopted me. So I am part of their WRAP collaborative, and like currently we're being retrained on a new WRAP model, and I get to be part of their group, and they've adopted me, and I go to all their meetings. And so over time, I've built those relationships as well. And they've built it with me. So there are times they're like, hey, can you help me with so-and-so? I have a kid at such and such school. Who do I reach out to? I can get that done for them. And then they also in turn can help me navigate some of the pieces that I don't necessarily know that they do. So it's actually been a beautiful collaboration as well. All right, so I'm going to show you a little bit of what one of the WRAP agenda looks like. So for example, I will admit that this has not worked quite as well with Zoom. I think it would be too to me, it feels too distracting to be sharing a document and having people be very, very, very small. That feels like more of a barrier to me when our families need to really feel connected to to the people that are in their world helping their family, having the screen taken away by an agenda. Sorry, this is actually the notes.
I don't think we can see it yet because we're still seeing your slides. So you might have to change how you share screen.
Oh, okay, maybe I can. Okay, so then I will restart again. Okay, so this is the agenda. No, it's not.
Yeah. Okay.
It is? Oh, that's not the one I'm seeing on my screen. Oh, there. Can you see that wraparound agenda? Okay, so this is just kind of a sample. It becomes very important. For example, like the first wraparound meeting that I have, it becomes much more important to talk about the structure. For those of us that have been meeting more regularly, we don't even need this per se, but it is something that, depending on the group, it's very group specific. Especially when we were meeting in person, I might have this available like on the table for the first meeting or two until we sort of got into the rhythm of how we come together. Then this would be something I would have. You can tell with this one, it's a bilingual document. So if my family is Spanish speaking, then I will have a bilingual document available for them. The other thing that comes with that is, I don't know, can you see this one that says mission statement?
Now, if you want to share your screen on Zoom that you share your whole desktop, then you can switch between. But if you share just one document, then that's all we see.
Okay.
There we go.
Can you see this one now? So for example, the format of how I would take notes when we were meeting in person followed this sheet. So I would have this available for anyone that wanted to take notes as we met and talked about. As you can tell, the successes, accomplishment, positive outcomes is the first thing that we always talked about. So I would have those large posted sheets and I would write this out. And so with some of my teams, I would be standing up and people were talking to me and I'm writing things down so that they would see, for example, maybe how many good things are being shared, that when we are impacted by our problems, we can't see them. And so this was very useful for some teams. After a while, no one used them, sometimes in the beginning, but I still had them available. One of the things I found over time, so as like I said, for some teams, I've been around for years. And so what I started finding over time is that if we had a team that's been meeting for a long time, if I was standing up at a wall taking notes, I felt like I wasn't part of the conversation. So depending on the stage of the team, I probably stopped using this with some groups because then I felt like I was apart from. And instead, what I would do is I would use one of these sheets and I would stay at the table or wherever we were sitting, talking together without me needing to stand up and sit back down, because I felt like that just changed the dynamic. I didn't like how I felt with some of my teams. So again, it's flexible. It's to meet the needs of the family. It's whatever energy and dynamic is created, and then we can be flexible with it. And then the final thing I will share is how this information is then generated into a document. Can you guys see the wrap plan? Can you see the document that says Child and Family Wraparound Plan?
Yes.
Okay. So then this is what all that information that we discuss at every single meeting that we come together. If it's a wraparound meeting, then this is the information that gets written into the document. So the top part stays the same, but the section that becomes important is this. So that section of the notes page is what's reflected in here. So we always start with focusing and highlighting whatever has been going well at school, at home, in therapy, if they're in an after school program, anything where we can, that we can key in on that is progress, that is positive, that is, oh my gosh, my child went to bed early today and we didn't battle for 20 minutes. Yay, then. So I became very good at anything that sounded like a accomplishment. I would, key on it, highlight it, talk about it, expand upon it, because it really helps to shift the mood of the parent, the mood of why we're all there. And then further down, I just want to show you. So then, for example, what happens here is anything we come up with as, well, we're going to have so-and-so, we're going to help this person, we're going to help this person get this appointment done. We're going to change the therapy times. All those things get written down because it helps me remember who's doing what. And then it helps me remind them later, hey, remember we were supposed to do such and such. The document does get shared with anyone who is a participant of a WRAP meeting. This document gets shared with them. So there is a way of keeping track of and holding people accountable. And so it's divided up by the area. So what I've done is I keep the section of the meeting we talked before, give an update of any of those, and then we generate any information about the action steps on that particular meeting. And so then, goes the structure. So this is how we capture at every meeting what was discussed, what was agreed upon, and then we do this for as long as the service is open.
One thing I find amazing often is that you'll have the family member who wants to help, but they always get overextended. The boundaries aren't clear and they end up taking on too much, and then they get overwhelmed and then they don't want to support their family member anymore, right? Like whether it's the aunt or sister or grandpa or something. And so by helping create that plan, they know exactly how they're going to help and they can set those boundaries and they don't get overwhelmed, right? It helps maintain those natural supports instead of the family with a lot of needs getting isolated because people just get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Do you see that?
Yeah. Yeah. I do have to admit that a lot of, for the last few years when I've worked with families, we've not had as much success bringing in more natural supports to the meetings. It may be that they have someone that they can rely on, but they may not necessarily participate in our meetings. For me, it's happened only limitedly that we'll have additional family members join our meetings. I did have one many years ago. I had a WRAP meeting with a family at a school, and she had a friend that accompanied her who's supportive for her. And what's interesting is then that parent eventually also became a client. Their child became a client. She liked what she saw. She saw that there was this way that there was a consistent communication. She liked the structure of the meeting. And so then this parent self-referred and felt that it would be helpful for her family to also open for WRAP. So I have found my more successful, I'll stop sharing, my more successful families are often the families that self-refer. And they might say something like, I've had WRAP in the past and I found it helpful. I had WRAP for my older child. I would like it again. They know about it because someone maybe that they know of had it. And so I find that when parents come to me or come to the school saying, I want WRAP, I know what it is, it's been helpful. Those are the families that work really hard because they're looking for it and they know exactly what it entails.
Yeah. I know Mitch had a question asking about like how often you meet with families.
So it depends. I will say that that when we start working together at first, if there's a lot of needs and there's already quite a few professionals that are connected with the family, we may need to meet, say, for example, every 2 weeks. I do have one family that I've worked with for a couple of years, and every time there's a lot, like there's a spike in needs, then we may go back to meeting twice a week. When things taper off a little bit, we may meet every 3 weeks. I have one client right now where we meet once a month.
Mhm. And you have the wrap meeting, and then sometimes you communicate in between, right? With the
Oh yeah,
family.
there's a lot of communication in between. With most of my families, if it's possible, I will probably, in the beginning, will probably visit them once a week. So I have a couple families that right now I meet once a week. There's a lot of needs. One family helping connect the family with a lot of social services. For example, getting their CalFresh, CalWorks, which is the food stamps and some financial aid back. The mother needs her own in-home support services and navigating that. They have overdue bills, so we're looking for agencies who can help pay bills while connecting the client to therapy, changing hand. I mean, like this one is I visit every week if they're available, because there's a lot of things to work on.
Great. I see Jason has a question.
Yeah. Hi, good morning, Mary. Thanks for
Hi.
sharing with us today.
Sure.
Hey, so I just quick question. So I've kind of become more familiar with this this past year as I've been on a RAP team for some students in our school. And I'd like your perspective on, like, as you're setting some of the goals, especially academic goals. And I know there's not going to be like a one size fits all answer to this, but when you're looking at goals for academics, what is a kind of typical timeline that you try to work towards? And I asked that question because, and I know it's going to be different in every situation, but in this last meeting that I was in, our goal was to start doing more school on a daily basis, and eventually leading up to doing, a full day's worth of school.
Mhm.
And the timeline that was thrown out by the person leading the meeting was 14 months. And I just about jumped out of my skin.
Oh.
Because I'm just thinking, I mean, this student is, in their later years of high school. And by the time we get to 14 months, like, they're not going to have any time to try and graduate. So I'd like your perspective on that.
That's interesting. So, when I think about coming together for a RAP meeting, you really are setting goals that oftentimes can be accomplished by the next time that you meet. So, for example, if the target goal is we want a child to come back to school, right? Maybe a full day. What we would be talking about at a RAP meeting would be, what's the first thing that we need to accomplish, and what is within our means to support, and what is the piece that we can address between now and maybe the next month that we meet. So it won't be something like, yeah, get the kid to school. You're actually going to break down. You're going to just break down, what is it that we can accomplish now? So, for example, if we have a child that's having a lot of, sounds like it's probably a teen, right? We have a lot of teens right now that are not coming to school. I have plenty myself. Then, for example, we have so what's making it difficult? So then you identify what's making it difficult to come to school. Do they have, I have a client where it's like he's in special education and is very connected with his case manager. And so then we start talking about, like, well, would it be possible to come to school for this period of the day at this time? What would be helpful? Would it be helpful if the teacher texted you? So you see what I mean? It's like, we're not addressing where we want this child to be in 14 months, which is still a good goal. There's not a problem with that. But you have to go scale it all the way back to figure out where are we right now and what is the first step we can take or the first steps we can take to address this school refusal.
Mhm.
I don't know. Does that address your question, Jason?
Yeah, it does. I mean, some of the difficulty comes just from the model of our program. So in our school, we work with homeschool families.
Ah,
So these students are at home working on school. We're providing support out to them in their home. And so just the idea of like being at home and picking up a pen and starting to do work in 14 months, that just seemed really a difficult one for me to agree to, I guess, is where I was at.
Yeah.
yeah, that would be very difficult. Like we don't need 14 months to address. It would seem to me something like that. But then it could be, the conversation could be, I mean, you mentioned this is already an existing RAP team, so there should be a therapist. Usually you don't have RAP without having mental health providers providing the direct work. So then you would be talking about what are the barriers, what types of conversations can be had, what's making it difficult. You know, that's the kind of conversation you're having in order to decide what would be the first step to that. And most of the time you would want your teen involved in these meetings, but I have found that not always is the case, even with my teams. The teen wants nothing to do with it often. And so we just continue to try to bring the child in while we keep coming together to support them anyway.
Yeah, I see Shidi has a question as well.
Oh, I just wanted to comment, Mari. So I work with a foster care agency, and we use the RAP model, and completely love it. If anything, we're leaning heavily into permanency for our youth. We found that has been, a supportive network. I feel like you made to your comment earlier in regards to education, because our youth are in our program for such a short time. We've noticed there being like a lot of hiccups when when youth are to be placed in schools and using their IEPs to advocate, because we are in a white county, and our families who adopt, they're white, and what's happening is the youth are with us for such a short time, and most of them are brown youth, and when they get enrolled in the schools, we're experiencing pushback, which adds to trauma. But that's a long-winded way of saying RAP program. We use it at our program, and I really appreciate how successful it is.
Yeah,
the success, but it is challenging for foster care youth, especially for school and education, because the units are so important, and IEPs, advocate to the services, and I don't know, we just noticed pushback with the district and really trying to explore ways to work together.
Yeah,
where they just to understand that layer of trauma versus, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
well, I'm glad to hear that it's been helpful. But yeah, you're right. What you're describing there, right, is the barriers in navigating those different systems. And when I think about our families, right, if we as professionals who have some experience navigating a system, usually we're at least a part of the one that we're working in, we already have a little bit of an understanding of what it's like to come up against these barriers. I mean, our families oftentimes have that overlay of, and this, this system and that system, and Medi-Cal, don't even get me started around, just how frustrating it is to just get a human being on the phone. Then we have our families that are dealing with all these multiple systems, and it can become extremely frustrating. And so that's one of the things that I oftentimes will assist, accompany alongside. We'll sit there and do phone calls together, with our Spanish speaking families. Then I even, we'll do that as well. And so either way, yeah, the overlay of those systems and those barriers becomes heightened when you have more than one, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. And I know, Shidi, you work at Seneca, which I'm sure you're familiar with, Mari. Yeah. And as a RAP worker, I've actually done that. Like, kids have been getting interdistrict transfers or whatever to register at a new school. They show up to school as a family. They're given pushback because they're seen as families that don't belong. And as a wrap worker, I go in and help them register. And unfortunately, sometimes families need that partnership to get through barriers that shouldn't exist, you know. And, it is, you know, that's part of the work too, is just creating that liaison of advocacy or bearing witness to something that people feel like they're dealing with alone.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's frustrating. I have one of my teens right now that we're trying to figure out. Comprehensive high school has not been, it's been challenging, and, you know, just the ways that sometimes we want to help, but then you have a child that's severely depressed who doesn't have strong connections in the school, and you have a school counselor that says, oh, we're going to send you to this alternative school. And next thing you know, you know, just the entire process of how to get that done with a child with an IEP. This started back in October, and we still don't have him where he needs to be. And I'm frustrated with how hard it's been to navigate my own educational system as a WRAP facilitator with colleagues I already know that I trust. And, you know, I'm having to push. And I was like, I can't imagine our families having to do that. And it becomes extremely frustrating. And then the distrust, right? We now have a distrust towards this system that our children are a part of. And it could be any system. And it makes it very difficult to take in information, especially if the kids are struggling. Then it feels like, you know, we're not working together.
Thank you so much, Mari. We're at time, but thank you for like just highlighting a model, a trauma-informed model for supporting families. I hear, you know, the principles of transparency, safety, collaboration, empowerment, even that like principle of like compassionate disruption, right? That we're there to like help change things when we bear witness to things that aren't working for our families. So important. So glad to have you back. I miss working with you.
I know we miss you too. And
Mhm.
thank you, everyone. You're doing great work. So it does matter.